Welcome back to the Old Photo Vault channel. The Girl Beside the White Fence, Rural America, c. 1900s. At first, the photograph feels ordinary. A weathered wooden house, peeling paint, a quiet fence holding back the woods. The kind of place that appears in hundreds of early rural photographs, taken to remember land rather than people. Then your eyes settle on the figure. A young girl stands near the fence, her dress pale against the darker trees. She isn't fully there. Her edges dissolve into the air, as if the world refused to hold her long enough. The camera caught her shape, but not her weight. In early photography, long exposure times often erased children who moved, leaving behind faint impressions like this. But something feels different. The girl's posture is still. Her face, though blurred, seems deliberate, turned toward the house, not the camera. Local records from rural communities like this often mention children lost to illness, scarlet fever, diphtheria, influenza, sometimes buried on family land, never far from home. If this is a technical accident, it's a perfect one. And if it isn't, then perhaps she never left the yard at all. Only learned how to stand quietly between moments, waiting for someone to notice. The open Bible at St. Catherine, Southern United States, c. 1930s. At first glance, the photograph feels resolute, almost defiant. A woman stands before a weathered wooden church, holding an open Bible as if presenting proof rather than faith. The sign above her head is plain and uncompromising. No charge. Donations only. Have faith in God. Nothing here seems meant to impress. She is dressed simply, her expression steady, unsmiling. This is not a posed moment of joy, but of purpose. Churches like St. Catherine were often built by hand in rural Black communities, serving as sanctuaries in a time when safety, dignity, and voice were not guaranteed elsewhere. But then the eye drifts to the right side of the frame. Behind the glass window, faint and pale, a second figure appears. Unfocused, incomplete, as if pressed into the image by accident. It does not align with the woman's stance or the room behind the window. It looks more like a presence than a person. Early cameras were sensitive to reflections, long exposures, and passing movement. A reflection of the photographer, perhaps, or someone crossing the room at just the wrong moment. Yet the figure seems to face inward, toward the Bible. If this is a mistake, it is a strangely reverent one. And if it is not, then maybe this photograph captured more than a woman holding scripture. Maybe it caught something lingering where faith was once asked for most. The woman in the mirror chair. Harlem, New York, CVRC, 1940s. At first, the photograph feels busy, but calm. A beauty salon in full rhythm. Hands working, heads bowed. Mirrors reflecting concentration. This was a place of care and quiet power, where women shaped one another's appearance and confidence during long, ordinary afternoons. Nothing seems out of place until you look at the far right mirror. Between the stylist and her client, a pale shape rises, thin and unfinished, like steam caught mid-thought. It doesn't match the posture of anyone in the room. Its outline is human, but its edges fade as if it never fully entered the moment. The women do not react. Their hands continue their work, steady and practiced. Early cameras often struggled with reflections, overlapping exposures, and motion. A passing figure, a shift of light, a technical flaw, any of these could explain it. And yet the shape appears seated, as if waiting its turn. Salons like this were places of memory as much as beauty, where stories lingered in mirrors long after the voices stopped. Perhaps this one never learned how to leave. The helmet he wouldn't put away. Europe, c. 1919. At first, the photograph feels painfully human. An elderly man sits alone, shoulders bent by age and weight that has nothing to do with the years. In his hands rests a soldier's helmet, heavy, dented, no longer needed. He studies it the way someone studies an object they once trusted with their life. This is a familiar image from the years after the Great War. Fathers, veterans, survivors, men who came home carrying objects long after the war had ended. But then the background begins to trouble the eye. Behind him, near the wall, a second figure stands. Pale, upright, too still. It does not belong to the room. Its shape is human, but without detail, like a memory that refuses to sharpen. The old man does not look toward it. His gaze stays on the helmet, as if he already knows what stands behind him. Early photographs often layered light and shadow in unpredictable ways. A reflection, a double exposure, a flaw in the developing process. And yet the figure's posture feels deliberate, watchful. Many veterans spoke of comrades who never truly left them, who remained present in quiet rooms, in long evenings, in the silence after the noise was gone. If this is only a photographic accident, it is a cruelly fitting one, because some wars do not end when the weapons are put away. And some soldiers, it seems, never come home alone. The Sister Who Stayed, American West, c. 1890s. At first, the photograph feels warm. Two young women stand close, arms folded into each other with the ease of people who have shared the same rooms, the same seasons, the same childhood. One smiles openly. The other looks straight ahead, calm and steady, as if this moment needed to be held still. Their clothing tells of care and pride. This was not a casual picture. Someone wanted this bond remembered. But the longer you look, the more the background begins to feel unsettled. Behind them, the studio backdrop is scarred and stained with age. Shapes bleed through the surface, marks left by time, chemicals, or careless handling. And yet, just over the right shoulder, a pale, oval shape lingers. It is too centered, too face-like, as if something else pressed forward long after the sisters had gone. In the late 19th century, families often returned to photographers after a loss, recreating closeness that could no longer exist. Sometimes, the image kept more than it was meant to. If this is only damage, it is a tender coincidence. And if it is not, then perhaps one sister never let go, choosing to remain where she was last held. The Third Woman by the Water, Europe, c. 1900. At first, the photograph feels carefully composed. Two women stand side by side on a narrow path, dressed in their finest clothes, hats balanced with deliberate elegance. The river beside them is calm, reflecting trees that seem to stretch endlessly into the background. This was meant to be a proper portrait, orderly, composed, respectable. Nothing appears unusual until the eye drifts to the water, just beyond the women, near the river's edge. A pale shape rises from the reflection. It resembles a woman standing still, her form thinner, softer, as though the surface of the water refused to mirror her completely. She does not disturb the water. She casts no shadow on the path. The two women do not turn toward her. Their expressions remain fixed, patient, as if they were instructed not to move, no matter what passed behind them. Early photographs often captured reflections imperfectly. Light, movement, or a ripple could stretch a figure into something unrecognizable. But this shape stands upright, too calm, too centered. If it is only a reflection, it is a strangely lonely one. And if it is not, then perhaps someone else was walking with them that day, choosing to remain where the path meets the water, long after the others moved on. The figure before the altar, Europe, c. 1920s. At first, the photograph feels reverent and still. An empty church interior, carefully framed. Light filters through tall windows, falling across polished floors and carved wood. The altar stands at the far end, radiant and untouched, as if waiting for a service that has not yet begun. It looks unoccupied. Then your eye adjusts to the center aisle. Just before the steps to the altar, a shape interrupts the symmetry. It is faint, blurred, unfinished, like a person caught between standing and kneeling. The form is darker at its center and dissolves at the edges, as though the camera struggled to decide whether it existed at all. There are no signs of movement elsewhere. The chairs remain empty. The chandeliers hang motionless. No clergy appear in the frame. Early cameras often recorded motion as ghost-like smears. Someone could have passed through during the long exposure, unaware they were being photographed. But the position feels intentional. The figure faces the altar. If this is a technical flaw, it is an oddly devout one. And if it is not, then perhaps this church was never truly empty, only quieter than we expect, holding those who once knelt here long after the doors were closed. The face in the stone wall, rural Europe, like 1910s. At first, the photograph feels composed and calm. An older woman leans at an open window, framed by thick stone walls and climbing vines. Her expression is steady, almost formal, the kind of look people adopted when cameras were still events rather than habits. This is her house. She belongs here. Then your eyes wander left. Set into the stone itself, just beyond the window frame, a second face appears. Pale, smaller. Its features are soft, but unmistakably human. Eyes, nose, a suggestion of a mouth. It does not align with the room behind the woman. It is embedded in the wall, as if the stone learned how to remember. The woman does not turn toward it. Her hands rest on the sill. She looks outward, away from whatever lingers beside her. Old photographs often reveal stains, chemical burns, or shadows shaped by age and moisture. Stone walls, especially, can trick the eye into finding faces where none exist. But this one feels placed. In rural homes like this, generations lived and died within the same walls. Children were born upstairs. Elders passed quietly in the same rooms. The house learned their shapes long before it forgot their names. If this is damage, it is strangely intimate. And if it is not, then perhaps the house is not empty when she stands at the window. Perhaps it is simply watching with her. The woman at the end of the passage, Europe C, early 1900s. At first, the photograph feels architectural. A narrow brick corridor stretches forward, carefully arched, its walls damp and scarred by time. This was a utilitarian place, perhaps part of a cellar, a fortification, or a service tunnel, built to be passed through, not remembered. Then the darkness at the far end begins to take shape. A woman stands there, blurred but upright, her form suspended between approach and retreat. One arm seems lifted, as if touching the wall for balance, or reaching out without fully committing to the gesture. Her face refuses clarity. The camera captured her presence, but not her certainty. Long exposure photography often turned movement into apparitions. A living person stepping forward too slowly could become something unreal, but the corridor itself feels complicit. The bricks narrow toward her, guiding the eye as if this is exactly where it wants you to look. Tunnels like this were places of labor, confinement, sometimes refuge. People pass through them in fear, in secrecy, in silence. If this is only motion, it is a troubling one. And if it is not, then perhaps she has been walking this passage for a long time, never reaching the light, never fully disappearing into the dark. The audience that never blinked. Unknown Theater, C, 1920s. At first, the image looks playful. Rows of identical faces, mouths open mid-song or mid-laugh, hands raised as if caught in applause. It feels like a performance still. Perhaps puppets, masks, or mannequins arranged for a novelty act meant to amuse. Then you realize something is wrong. Their eyes are too still, too dark. Each face is nearly the same, yet not quite. Tiny differences in expression, in the angle of the head, in how wide the mouth opens. They are not reacting to anything. They are waiting. In the early 20th century, theaters and traveling shows often used ventriloquist dolls, papier-mâché figures, or costumed mannequins to fill seats for promotional photographs. Long exposures flatten detail, turning painted faces into something unnervingly alive. But these figures face forward, not toward a stage. Some seem to look directly at the camera. If this is a staged illusion, it is an effective one. The crowd feels attentive in a way real audiences never are. No distraction, no movement, no blinking. And if this image wasn't meant to be unsettling, then it asks an uncomfortable question. When the performance ended and the lights went out, who exactly was left watching? The woman on the winter veranda. Northern Europe, c. 1905. At first, the photograph feels quiet, almost polite. A woman stands alone on a covered veranda, dressed head to toe in dark winter clothing. Snow blankets the trees beyond the railing, softening the world into something hushed and distant. A wicker chair sits nearby, empty, as if someone has just stepped away. Her posture is formal, deliberate. This was not a candid moment. Early cameras demanded stillness, and she gives it willingly. Her face is pale beneath a heavy hat, eyes fixed forward, unreadable. Then the stillness becomes unsettling. She stands on a rug laid neatly over the cold floor. Yet her feet seem uncertain, almost as if they do not quite belong to the surface beneath her. The shadow around her body is faint, thinning toward the ground. The veranda feels solid. She does not. Photographs from this period often produced strange effects. Breath and cold air, long exposure blur, chemical fading that erased edges. Any of these could explain the softness of her outline, and yet the scene feels staged around absence. The empty chair, the open space, the way winter presses in, but she remains untouched by it. If this is merely a trick of light, it is a lonely one. And if it is not, then perhaps she is not standing on the veranda at all. Perhaps she is waiting where she once stood, long after the house learned how to be quiet. The figure inside the mill, American West, c. 1880s. At first, the photograph feels purely practical. A wooden mining structure stands against a dry hillside, hastily built and already beginning to lean. These kinds of mills appeared overnight during boom years, thrown together with the hope that the ground beneath them was worth the effort. Then you notice the man. He stands beneath the structure, clearly visible, posed as expected for the long exposure. His presence grounds the image, giving scale to the building and proof that this place was once alive with work. But inside the mill, behind the planks and beams, something else lingers. A second figure appears suspended within the structure itself. Pale, elongated, and partially obscured by wood. It does not align with the shadows. It does not match the angle of the beams. Its shape is human, but incomplete, as if only part of it agreed to be photographed. Early cameras were unforgiving. Double exposures, shifting light, or someone moving through the frame could leave behind impressions like this. And yet, the figure seems enclosed, trapped within the mill rather than passing through it. Mining camps were dangerous places. Accidents were common. Some men never left the structures they worked in. If this is a photographic error, it is a fitting one. And if it is not, then perhaps the mill kept more than ore. Perhaps it learned how to hold on to those who built it, long after the work was done. The woman who never reached the steps, Europe, c. 1900. At first, the photograph feels elegant and still. An ornate veranda stretches across the front of a grand house, its ironwork delicate, almost lace-like. Stone pillars rise evenly, and bare trees stand quietly in the background, waiting for spring. Everything appears carefully balanced, composed. Then you notice her. Midway along the balcony, a pale figure descends. not on the stairs, not through a doorway, but directly through the air. Her shape is unmistakably human. Long dress, narrow waist, head inclined slightly forward. And yet she does not touch the floor below. She fades as she falls, thinning into light before reaching the ground. There is no sign of movement elsewhere. No blurred leaves, no shifting shadows. Just her. Early photography often transformed motion into apparitions. A woman stepping forward too soon, too slowly, could dissolve like this during a long exposure. But her posture is calm, controlled, as if she knew exactly where to appear. Old houses like this witnessed long lives, births, departures, illnesses, quiet endings. Balconies were places of waiting, of watching for someone who had not yet come home. If this is only a photographic mistake, it is a strangely graceful one. And if it is not, then perhaps she is still descending, caught forever between the life she lived upstairs and the ground she never quite reached. The bear who watched from the doorway, Pacific Northwest, c. 1900. At first, the photograph feels ceremonial. A man stands rigid beside a wooden building, dressed in traditional clothing, holding a carved staff topped with an animal figure. His expression is calm, deliberate, as if he understands the importance of being seen exactly as he is. Beside him, in the open doorway, a bear sits unnaturally still. It is not restrained. It is not posed like a trophy. Its body leans forward, one paw resting on the threshold, head turned slightly away from the camera, as if listening to something inside the building rather than outside it. Early photographers often staged scenes meant to display power, culture, or control over nature. A trained animal, perhaps. A moment carefully arranged, and yet the bear's posture feels wrong. Too human, too patient. The doorway behind it is dark, swallowing detail. The bear does not look afraid of it. If this is performance, it is an uneasy one. And if it is not, then perhaps the doorway was never empty. Perhaps the bear was not guarding the house, but watching it, waiting for something inside to finish remembering the man who stood beside it. The space between the crosses, Eastern Europe, c. 1915. At first, the photograph feels stark but ordinary. Two wooden crosses stand side by side in open farmland, freshly planted, their bases still raw with turned earth. Simple markers, names carved by hand, the kind of graves made quickly when there was no time for stone. Behind them, the land rolls on without pause. Fields, hills, silence, life continuing as if nothing has happened. Then you notice the space between the crosses. A pale, vertical shape rises from the ground, thinner than smoke, thicker than mist. It has no clear edges, but it stands upright, positioned carefully between the graves, as though someone chose that exact place to remain. It does not cast a shadow. It does not disturb the flowers laid below. Wartime photographs often suffered from light leaks, chemical streaks, or motion caught during exposure. A passing breath of wind, a flaw in the negative, a moment the camera failed to hold. But the placement feels deliberate. Graves like these were often shared by brothers, friends, men buried together because they fell together. Records were incomplete. Bodies were not always separated. If this is damage, it is an unsettling coincidence. And if it is not, then perhaps something was buried that day without a name, and chose the only space left to stand between the dead who were remembered. The writer who did not cast snow, American Plains, c. 1890s. At first, the photograph feels calm and deliberate. A winter camp rests among bare trees. A teepee stands firm against the cold, its opening dark but welcoming. Two riders move slowly through the snow, their horses steady, their bodies wrapped against the weather. It is the kind of image meant to preserve routine, travel, survival, continuity. Then the third presence appears, between the riders, slightly behind them, a pale figure rises from the ground itself. It has the outline of a person, upright and narrow, but no clear features. Snow does not bend beneath it. The horse beside it casts no shadow in its direction. It seems untouched by the cold that defines everything else in the frame. Early cameras often struggled with movement in low light. Breath, drifting snow, or a figure passing too quickly could leave behind a translucent trace. But this figure keeps pace. Winter journeys were dangerous. Not everyone reached the next camp. Some were buried where they fell, marked only by memory. If this is a photographic flaw, it is a hauntingly precise one. And if it is not, then perhaps someone is still riding with them, following the path home, long after their body learned how to stop. The song that stayed behind. Southern United States, c. 1920s. At first, the photograph feels easy and warm. Two men sit beneath tall trees, the afternoon stretched thin with shade and quiet. One holds a guitar, smiling softly, fingers resting where music usually begins. Behind them, a small wooden house leans with age, the kind built to last just long enough. This is a moment of rest, of familiarity, of sound that doesn't need to be written down to be remembered. Then your eyes drift between them. Behind the chairs, close to the tree trunk, a pale shape lingers, soft-edged, human in height, but lacking detail. It does not belong to the house. It does not align with the shadows. It feels less like a reflection and more like an echo. It's pressed into the image after the moment had already passed. The men do not notice it. One adjusts his boot. The other still smiles, as if listening inwardly. Early photographs often captured smoke, dust, or slow movement as ghostly forms. A passing figure, a breath caught mid-laugh, a flaw in the emulsion. But this shape seems to lean toward the music. Porch songs were shared, not owned. They carried memory of people who sat there once, of voices that faded before they could be recorded. If this is only an accident of light, it is a gentle one. And if it is not, then perhaps the song did not end when the hands stopped playing. Perhaps someone stayed behind to listen, long after the afternoon learned how to be silent. The figure at the edge of the garden, Europe, c. 1910. At first, the photograph of Veranda feels distant and formal. A grand building rises behind a stretch of garden, its pale walls softened by age and haze. Trees gather along the edges, half obscuring the structure, as if nature is already beginning to reclaim it. This was a place of order, perhaps a residence, a hospital, or an institution meant to appear permanent. Then the lower edge of the image begins to resolve, near the bottom right, standing alone in the grass. A faint figure appears. It is human in shape, upright and still, but almost transparent, as though the camera only half remembered it. The figure does not interact with the building. It does not face the lens. It seems to be looking elsewhere, towards something beyond the frame. There are no clear footprints, no shadow anchoring it to the ground. Early photographs often blurred slow movement or recorded someone who stood just long enough to leave an impression without detail. A caretaker passing by, a visitor who did not know to remain still. But the figure feels deliberate, placed too carefully at the edge, as if it did not wish to be fully seen. Large buildings like this held many lives briefly. Some arrived willingly. Others did not leave when they expected to. If this is only a technical flaw, it is a lonely one. And if it is not, then perhaps someone remained in the garden after everyone else went inside. Standing quietly where memory thins, waiting for the building to remember them back. The woman who wore the bear, Alaska. C. BU. 1900. At first, the photograph feels theatrical, even playful. A woman sits upright, smiling gently, wrapped in a full bearskin costume, massive paws draped over her shoulders, the animal's head mounted below her hands like a trophy transformed into a seat. This was meant to impress, to astonish, to show endurance and novelty to audiences far from the Arctic. Her expression is calm, comfortable. She does not look afraid of the bear she wears. But the longer you look, the more the image begins to feel wrong. The bear's body does not read as separate from her. Its paws frame her shoulders like arms. Its head faces forward, mouth open, teeth visible, aligned too perfectly with her posture. She is not dressed in the bear. She appears seated within it. Early promotional photographs often exaggerated scale and costume. Thick furs, staged props, carefully arranged illusions for exhibitions and postcards. Yet her smile feels intimate, almost private, as if this moment was not meant for spectacle, but for memory. In Arctic cultures, bears were not merely animals. They were spirits, ancestors, beings that crossed between worlds. If this is only a costume, it is an unsettlingly reverent one. And if it is not, then perhaps the photograph captured a moment of becoming. A woman remembered not as herself alone, but as something older, larger, and still watching through borrowed eyes. The veil she never removed. England, c. 1870s. At first, the photograph feels formal and restrained. A woman sits upright in a carved chair, dressed in heavy mourning clothes. Her veil falls softly over her hair and shoulders, signaling grief that was meant to be seen, recognized, respected. This was a common ritual. Widows photographed not as they felt, but as society expected them to appear. Then the figure behind her becomes clear. A second presence leans forward, pale and unfinished, its hands resting where the veil gathers. The face is faint, but unmistakably male, emerging from the background as if pulled forward by the fabric itself. He is not reflected in anything. He is not seated where a living person would be. The woman does not react. Her gaze remains steady, distant, as if she has already accepted what stands behind her. In Victorian photography, double exposure was sometimes used deliberately, to place the dead beside the living, to soften loss with illusion. But this figure does not feel carefully composed. His edges blur unevenly, as though he arrived late, uninvited. If this is a trick of the camera, it is a cruelly intimate one. And if it is not, then perhaps the veil was never meant to hide her grief at all. Perhaps it was meant to give him something to hold on to, so he would not have to let her go. Whether these images are nothing more than moments trapped by old cameras, or something that chose to remain, each photograph leaves behind a question that time never answered. Maybe it's just a technical flaw, maybe coincidence, or maybe these are memories that never learned how to fade. If you notice something unsettling, tell us in the comments. What did you see? And which image stayed with you the longest? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you enjoy uncovering the quiet mysteries hidden in vintage photos. Because sometimes the past isn't gone. It's just waiting to be seen again.